Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend. Welcome to another episode of After Credits. I am Liam. I'm going here solo because Daniel and Barnyard are going to see Assassin's Creed, the new shitty video game movie. And I'm going to be doing an ACN movie I saw the other day called Jackie. You might have heard this movie. It's been getting a lot of awards buzz, especially for Natalie Portman's performance as Jackie Kennedy. And I think she's going to win the Oscar for this movie. It's directed by Pablo Larraín, and this movie is basically, I wouldn't say it's a biographical film of Jackie Kennedy. It's a movie about some events in her life. It's kind of like the days directly preceding and directly after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, her husband, the President of the United States, in 1963. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect because biographical films do very well during Oscar season. We've seen a few this year, like not necessarily biographical films, but kind of these true stories like Loving and Lion, and they're well done, but they're kind of just there to tell you a story you didn't know, and a lot of times they're not really as interesting as they could be or should be. They're kind of forgettable, and I don't usually think they're always worthy of getting that Oscar nomination. That being said, Jackie is not like that at all. This is one of the, not only the best biographical films of the year, this is one of the best movies of the year, hands down. It's a really interesting character study. I compared it a lot to the Steve Jobs movie that came out last year. Uses this kind of great historical figure to show this character study, and it's really interesting sort of how they explore Jackie Kennedy as a person. It's very interestingly directed by Pablo Larraín. There's some sort of self-indulgence in some of the cinematography. This may turn some people off, but personally I felt like it was justified. This isn't like Pablo Sorrentine in Youth or Ewan McGregor in American Pastoral when they just kind of throw shit at the camera. This is an interesting visual design that uses to tell a greater story. Before I get into anything more, spoiler alert, if you don't want to get spoilers for this movie at all, scroll the time code right here. You get my final thoughts on the movie and scores out of 6 stars. Fuck, I'm spilling it. This movie kind of tells sort of interlooping time lines. There's some different events. It's not told linearly. There's some flashbacks, some events to early in the movie, and you kind of get these different storylines that are cut together. I think this is a really effective way to tell a story. It's a more interesting way to tell the story because you're not just focused on the same thing and it doesn't go scene to scene to scene. You get to get different aspects of the movie, and I think that whenever one aspect is maybe getting slow, you move on to a different storyline. The main crux of it is she is having an interview directly after the assassination with this reporter played by Billy Crudup, who you may know as Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. Both Daniel and I are journalism students, and this was a really effective way to portray journalists. A lot of times journalists in movies, I feel like they come either this sort of horrible depiction of journalists, this like nightmarish sort of person that's just looking for the to sell headlines, or you get this kind of idealistic, stupid thing that they use to try to heroize journalists. But this was, I felt, was a very neutral sort of way to explore the character. And I think Billy Crudup is great in this movie. And this was an interesting way to sort of flash back to a lot of these previous events. There's a part where she's kind of doing a tour of the White House. This wasn't necessarily necessary to the overall story, but sort of the idealism of this era, you kind of see it's sort of talking about how the Kennedys were, in a way, the American sort of royal family. They were these larger-than-life figures, and I felt like this sort of tour aspect of the movie, that really connected to that sort of theme of the movie. And there's a way in which you know, you can sell the theme of a movie without having to directly put it in the audience's face. I always hate that when you literally get the message of the movie by a character talking dialogue. Right after the assassination, it's mostly dealing with Jackie Kennedy's relationship with RFK, Bobby Kennedy, JFK's brother, who in this movie is played by Peter Sarsgaard. I've heard Peter Sarsgaard's gotten some flack for this performance. They're saying he wasn't good as RFK. I don't understand that at all. I thought he was fucking fantastic in this movie. I think he's worthy of a Best Supporting Actor nomination. You go into this movie thinking, you know, this is going to be this huge tragedy for Jackie Kennedy, but you were thinking, oh, this guy also lost his brother. I feel like Peter Sarsgaard gave a very subdued performance. I don't know what Bobby Kennedy looks like. I don't have a really clear imagining him, but I really felt like he sort of captured, again, this larger-than-life persona. And let's talk about Natalie Portman. She's fantastic in this movie, and I'm going to say a cliche thing that a lot of critics will say in reviews that isn't true, but in this movie I feel it is true, and that I completely forgot this was Natalie Portman. That's a stupid thing to say, especially since she's famous. Within the first 5 minutes, I had to remind myself, fucking this is Padme Amidala, because I think it was maybe either the makeup or the accent, which she completely sells. I think she'll probably win the Oscar. As to where if she should, I think Emma Stone in La La Land and Amy Adams in Arrival are both fantastic. I would be good with either of three of them winning. There's also a section in the movie where she's talking to a priest played by John Hurt, you know, another fantastic actor. These scenes are pretty good too. In the same way of those tour scenes, they sort of connect to the themes in the movie, but you do get to actually see her open up to somebody, because she isn't really able to open up to any other character except for this priest she meets at the end of the movie. And I felt those scenes were very effective too. I also like that the assassination, it's talked about, but you don't actually see it to the end of the movie, and when it's done beautifully. It's perfectly shot. You get to see the rawness of the violence and the rawness of the emotion. It's weird. I was talking to my friend after I saw this movie, and I described it as, it's not as emotional as it is fascinating. I think that's what a lot of these sort of awards-baity sort of movies are trying to tug at your heartstrings. This movie isn't trying to make you feel sad for Jackie Kennedy necessarily. You can definitely empathize with her, but it turns her into this sort of Shakespearean character, and it's this big Shakespearean drama. As I mentioned before, there's some self-indulgence with some of the visuals in this movie. There's some very interesting visual tricks. It's a very dialogue-heavy movie, but there's also, it's not like a stage play. There's definitely things that they do cinematically that you couldn't do. And you also see a relationship with her, I think it's like her assistant, who's played by Greta Gerwig, who's also very good in this movie. Maybe a Best Supporting Actress. She's not gonna get nominated, but she was really good in this movie. The movie isn't necessarily showing the most favorable light of Lyndon B. Johnson, which is, I think, another interesting historical figure. And I think Johnson had the perfect amount of screen time in this movie. He was there for the scenes necessary. You don't deal with him too much. And they don't deal with the assassination, like Oswald and that stuff specifically, all that much either. Like, this isn't JFK, you know, Oliver Stone movie. This isn't a conspiracy movie. This is a character piece. And you gotta know that going into this movie. But I think if you do know that, you're gonna really like this movie. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you scroll to the time code, you're here for my non-spoiler thoughts on Jackie and scores out of 6 stars. Overall, I think this is one of the best movies of the year. It's a very unconventional film. It's a very unconventional way to tell a biographical story. I think Natalie Portman is fantastic as Jackie. I think she'll win the Oscar. I would not be upset if she did, because she is fucking great, and this might be my favorite performance I've ever seen from her. And that's saying a lot, because Natalie Portman is one of the best actresses working today, Star Wars prequels aside. Peter Sarsgaard, I think, is great as RFK. I'd love to see him get nominated for that. I'd love to see this movie sweep the awards. It's probably not going to. Daniel and I had an argument earlier today. He said, I said, I don't think this movie is going to get nominated for Best Picture, unfortunately, because I think it's too smart for Academy voters, in the same way that Steve Jobs was last year. I think it's not your conventional piece, and it's a more interesting piece, and hopefully it's going to stand the test of time. I think it will. I can't say enough good things about this movie. I really don't have any flaws with this movie. The only thing I would say is, you got to know what you're getting into. I can see somebody seeing this movie and kind of being confused by it, or kind of off-put by it, and if you're really into directing, you might think some of the directing is a little bit pretentious. But for me, I think that it completely worked, and I think this is one of the best movies of the year. I'm going to go really big in this movie. I'm going to go 5.5 out of 6. Like I said, I really don't have any problems with this movie, but for it to be a 6-star, it kind of has to be in that rank where I consider it one of my all-time favorites. And at this point, I wouldn't quite do that. But, you know, who knows? I think, you know, if I end up rewatching this movie, which I probably will at some point, I could discover more things about it. It's fucking fantastic. If you like this video, please click the like button down on the Down syndrome button that I have. Please click the like button. God damn it, I am retarded. So if you like this video, please click the like button down below. Also make sure to subscribe so you can be the first to know whenever we have new content. In terms of upcoming reviews, we got Fences coming out soon, as well as Assassin's Creed. We're also going to be having our best and worst of the year list coming out soon. You're going to figure out what everybody's picks are for the top 10 best and top 10 worst movies of 2016. Definitely check out that. We're all very excited about that. Also make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to check more ramblings from me and my bullshit, you can check out my blog, liammgahian.wordpress.com. I do quick movie reviews. I review every single movie I see in theaters. So if you want to get a general idea about some movies that we might not cover on the main show, it's going to be less detailed, but you can basically get my thoughts and grades on those movies. As for Daniel, he and Barnyard are now watching Assassin's Creed and probably cutting themselves, because that movie is supposed to be terrible, even though David Ehrlich, my favorite film critic, gave it a pretty positive review. But I've heard bad things, and it looks like the video game genre isn't doing itself any good, and I'm not doing myself any good by staying here. So you guys have a good night.